All right, back for another video in the NFC West. Hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. Yesterday's video, we talked about the Los Angeles Rams and what we think their season is going to look like in 2025. So if you haven't seen that video yet, you don't necessarily have to watch season order, but definitely check it out if you haven't already, either before or after watching this one. But Brian, today we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks and kind of what they've done since the 2024 season ended. So what do you think about this team and kind of what they look like?
Yeah, so last year they were a 10-17. Spoiler, they're not going to be that this year.
We think.
Yeah, we think. I think they have totally flipped this team around. They did pick up a couple of good additions, I think, but I just I don't know. We'll see. Let's get into it. What do you got in their departures? Who left?
So three huge names, and a lot of times what you guys are probably seeing from the series is I'm only going to bring up a couple of guys, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 at the most for any particular team. There are some teams you look at what the 49ers left, and I'm not going to mention all these names. You're just going to have to go and look it up yourself. It was like 20 guys left in free agency. That some of them signed with other teams, some of them remained unsigned, might show up in training camp somewhere. But I'm only going to talk about what matters. Well, these three names are probably three of the biggest names that you could bring up for any team this year. And it's Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. I mean, over the last couple of years, that was their team. Geno Smith having a career resurgence. You think about the start of his career was not good. Maybe that wasn't his fault. He was a New York Jet. But he has been great since being in Seattle. And the big move for him is this was not a free agency move. This was a trade. They sent him off to the Raiders. DK Metcalf was their number one receiver. He got traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then Tyler Lockett was cut from his contract, and he has since signed to the Tennessee Titans, where we see a lot of old receivers go to end their career, like Julio Jones did and so many others. But it's going to be a new look offense for them. They've got a new offensive coordinator. Obviously, they've had to bring in a new quarterback or two. We will talk about that. And new weapons in that offense as well. So I guess before we get into who they added, I mean, are you surprised to see so many notable names that were near and dear to Seahawks fans all leave in a single offseason?
I really was. DK Metcalf, I don't know that came as a big surprise. I think a lot of people saw that coming. But I remember talking about it on the podcast when we got the notification that Geno was traded down to Las Vegas. And everybody was like, wow, because we had talked about it. We all thought from the end of the season that Sam Darnold would go down to Las Vegas, and that's just where he was going to end up. But that didn't happen. It's like I said, the Geno Smith, to me, I think was the biggest trade because he has done so well in Seattle. He really has been the face of that franchise for the past few years. And like I said, to see him in a different uniform is going to be take a little bit of getting used to, but I'm not, I said it in the Raiders video. I'm not mad at that trade. I think it's going to be good for Geno. I think it's going to be really good for Las Vegas as well. We'll see how these additions shape up for Seattle, and let's see if they made the right choice. I feel like they did not, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, so going right into those additions, obviously, like you alluded to, Sam Darnold coming over from Minnesota. He had by far and away the best year of his career, and he gets rewarded for it. I think he knew that there was not going to be a light at the end of the tunnel for Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy is their guy. They used a top 10 draft pick on him. And because he got hurt, in the preseason last year, it gave Darnold the chance to be the unquestioned starter. And he did some mostly really good things. He had an overall good season in the Kevin O'Connell offense. And he now gets rewarded with a chance to be the starter here in Seattle. And to me, it's kind of one of those things that, do you view that as being an upgrade from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold? And I think right now my answer is no. I feel like this offense is taking a step back. You got rid of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf because maybe they were older and you just wanted to get out on them before the time ran out on them. Jackson Smith and Jigba is their new star receiver. So obviously he's going to get a lot of looks. But if Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf were old and you were worried about their productivity, why go out and sign Cooper Kupp from the Rams to come in? It seems like not just more of the same, but basically a much more extreme version of that. I feel like certainly what DK Metcalf could give you this year in tandem with JSN, even if you got rid of Tyler Lockett, I don't know that you're replacing that with Cooper Kupp. And, news, I guess, getting to the draft a little early, they didn't bring in a marquee wide receiver to help fill that talent void either. So I'm not sure that the Seattle offense is going to be as productive as what they were last year. But one thing that they did add that I feel like they needed was an edge rusher, and they got that in the form of DeMarcus Lawrence, who has been a longtime Cowboy, can still get after the quarterback, can still apply pressure. And you look what this offense, what the offenses in this division does and do so well. You have to get pressure on the quarterback. We've talked about that a lot in these other videos of this series so far. You've got to get pressure on quarterbacks in today's day and the way the game is played. So DeMarcus Lawrence, I think, is a very good, very underrated signing, but I'm not high on what they've done to this point of the offseason so far.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. Lawrence may be an okay edge rusher, but I don't remember a lot coming out of Dallas hearing his name last year. As he's the premier guy, and he's going to give you a lot of production on that side. He may do wonderful under new coaching, new defensive coordinator, new team. Some guys do that. They end up being better after getting traded, but I don't know. We'll see on how they shape up, but I'm not sold on the Seahawks team. Just for now, we'll get into predictions here in a little bit. Re-signings. I mean, I don't. Do you have any like notable re-signing? Like, oh my goodness, or just kind of, they picked up they picked up these guys. They kept them on contract, and let's move forward.
Yeah, I think kind of like what we said, this is a team that's in flux. They are changing, not necessarily the identity of the team, but certainly the faces of the organization. They brought back the guys that I felt like they could at the proper value. So you look at Josh Jobe at corner. They brought back Ernest Jones at linebacker and a couple of defensive tackles that I really like in Jerron Reed and Jonathan Hankins. They're keeping that defensive core together. Maybe because they think their defense is what needs to be prominent, get back to that Legion of Boom style play, where their defense really was what made them the force that they were in their contending years. They went to Super Bowls back when Russell Wilson was at the helm. We all remember the throw at the 1 yard line instead of giving it to Marshawn Lynch that turned into a Malcolm Butler interception that gave the Patriots another Super Bowl that they didn't need. And, Seattle has come a long way from being those Super Bowl contending teams. And I just don't think that they've done enough in this offseason to get back to that level of play. But I do think that they had a stellar draft. I think that's where they really did the most to help improve their team so far. So first round pick, Gray Zabel, offensive guard out of North Dakota State. Absolutely loved the pick. He was somebody that a lot of people had projected to go in the second round. And the closer and closer you got to the draft, there was a lot of really smart minds in that draft community that said, this is a name that you are going to hear early, possibly top 15, approaching that top 10. I mean, this is somebody that could have gone 12 or 13. They get him at, I think, pick 18 maybe. But Gray Zabel was absolutely perfect. I believe he has a relative that also plays in Seattle in another sport. So it's really cool to see them both go from that North Dakota area to now playing in Seattle. Just a cool story, a little side note. My favorite. Just a familiar face. It's going to keep him out of trouble. Not that I ever worry about that out of him. Probably my favorite pick for them came in the second round. Nick Emanwari was a safety out of South Carolina. I know a lot of people love Malachi Starks, and I'm not saying anything bad about him. But I love the tape of Emanwari and what I think he could be. Somebody that flashed in college, a productive specimen from a physicality and an athletic standpoint. I think he can actually have his best football in front of him going to the pros. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what he can be, and I'm really excited to see what Seattle can mold him into. Elijah Arroyo, tight end out of Miami. This was a very productive tight end in the Cam Ward offense down in Miami last year. He's somebody that could be an intriguing, skill position player for an offense that, like we said, have changed a lot of receivers out. This is somebody that could help fill the void left by DK Metcalf just in a different way. And then the real interesting pick, we usually talk a couple of picks for each team in these videos, but Jalen Milroe, quarterback from Alabama, coming in as a third-round pick, going to sit behind Sam Darnold. They have already said that they plan on using him in specialized packages this year, which tells me they're going to bring him in for running plays. They're going to utilize his athleticism, maybe some zone reads, some keepers, some RPOs, and stuff like that. They know what kind of special athlete he is. This is somebody that can fit that Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson type of running quarterback ceiling, though he does have a lot to work on as a thrower at this level and getting consistent. But what makes him so interesting is I thought Jalen Milroe was a great pick for Seattle when they had Geno Smith as the quarterback to learn from Geno Smith. They bring in Sam Darnold on what I think was a 3-year contract. But if you look at the structure of that deal, they have an out after this year. If Sam Darnold was a product of that Minnesota offense and he does not look good, this could be very much a one and done thing for Sam Darnold. And Jalen Milroe will be the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks at some point this season and moving forward. And watch out if that's the case because he is a dynamic talent. So I feel like he needed to be talked about. That being said, the draft is great. They've got a lot of productive pieces to develop, and development doesn't usually happen as fast as you like. It is not an automatic process in the NFL. So looking at 2025, they tied for the best record in 2024. I have them falling from a 10-7 team to a 7-10 team and finishing last in the cellar of this. I just don't know that with all the changes they've made, I don't think it's been for the better. And I think that hurts Seattle. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's a great prediction. I have them coming in last in this division as well. I don't even know that they win 7 games. Honestly, I don't think they're going to be as bad as the Raiders were last year. But they're not going to be far off that either. If they go 6-11, I wouldn't be surprised to see it. But there again, if they go 8-9, I'm not surprised at that either. So I've got them in that. They're going to win 6 to 8 games. But I'm like you. I think they're the last in this division. They didn't do enough. Maybe between this year's draft, next year's draft, and picking up, once they really see their weaknesses, they kind of regroup and come back in 2026. But for this year, for 2025, I would not put my money on them, but there again, I wouldn't follow my own advice either. So they might come out and look like absolute studs. So, obviously we want to see that happen for their fans. We never want to shoot any team, but we do want to take a realistic approach to these videos. So I'm right there with you. I think 7-10 is a really good prediction on this team this year.
Yeah, I feel like there's a range of outcomes with a lot of teams, and maybe this is a median outcome for them. I could see them being 5-12 easier than I could see them being 12-5. And I just don't think that they're going to win a double-digit number of games. That even if they are pushing to win the division or get a wild card spot, I think they'll be lucky to get it. And right now, I feel like they are one of the more fragile teams where if it's a Kenneth Walker injury, is Charbonnet able to carry them? If it's a JSN injury, Cooper Kupp is not carrying them at this stage of his career. And then certainly if there's a Darnold injury after you made that investment in him, I don't think that Jalen Milroe is ready to stop it, like ready to step in, stop the bleeding, and be a productive, winning quarterback in far, as far as real life NFL games go. Great for fantasy, but not too good for real life football immediately. I think he can get there. But the biggest thing for them is that if I was going to put a strength on this Seattle thing is we've seen good defense and good running game be a winning combination for a lot of teams in the past. Certainly, Baltimore has made a lot of money and been very productive with that formula over the years.
Yep.
And they do have an ascending defense. They have made investments into it. They've got a strong run game. I talk about that duo at running back that they have with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. But I just, they bring in Damian Martinez as a rookie running back out of Miami. They've got some good running backs, but that also plays into their biggest concern, which is they've got a lot of new pieces on offense. They've got a new offensive coordinator, so you've got a new quarterback, new receivers, new offensive linemen. It's all a new scheme. How does everybody fit in and translate to that? And the questions on their offensive line. I mean, Gray Zabel, like I said, their first round pick, I think he's going to be great for them for a very long time. But is it enough to keep Sam Darnold protected? Is it enough to open up the lanes for those running backs and allow that team to control the game the way that they're going to have to? Because they are not built like a Kansas City is or like a Cincinnati Bengals team is, where they can put up 40 and 50 points a week and just try to outscore you. They're not going to win that way. And very similarly to the way that the Chargers are built, it's just going to be do they have enough for games to go their way? And right now I'm leaning on the side of the fence that they don't.
Yep, I agree. I'm right there. I think we both are right together on what the Seahawks are this year. And with that, we both could be wrong. Fantasy football, who on the Seahawks would you put on your fantasy team?
I've only got two names that I think are worth bringing up. Jackson Smith-Njigba and Kenneth Walker, and they're very opposing ideologies. So if you think that you have a bad team, you typically don't want the running backs because they're going to be in negative game scripts. If they're down by 3 touchdowns, they're not running the ball very often. That being said, I think that Seattle is probably going to be at the top end of the neutral run script rate for the league. I think at the beginning of games and in close games, they are going to want to run the ball a lot, and Kenneth Walker should see a lot of that work as long as he is healthy enough to do so. So Kenneth Walker can be productive. He's also one of the more elusive backs. He breaks a lot of tackles. He makes a lot of guys miss. He gets a lot of those second chance yards that a lot of running backs don't get. So despite being a bad team, I think Kenneth Walker can be productive. But when they do get down in games like we think that they will so often, who are they throwing it to? And it's Jackson Smith-Njigba. And I think they paid Sam Darnold that contract to come in and complete passes to JSN. And I think that the breakout that he had last year with Geno Smith is going to continue to get built upon this year. They put a lot of faith in him by trading away DK Metcalf and cutting Tyler Lockett. They are crowning him as their star receiver this year. So I think you should see some big numbers go his way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of people are going to try to pick up Darnold because of, the success he had last year in Minnesota. But I don't know that I would want him on my team, to be honest. Really, Walker 3 is probably the one that I would pick up as a running back. And even with that, he's probably going to be my, RB2 at best, if not just sitting on the bench to bring into that somebody gets hurt or that bye week where you just need a running back. He's not a bad back at all. He did score a pretty good amount of points last year, but he as far as fantasy wise, but I don't know that I'm going to pick up anybody on Seahawks, to be honest with you. I'm not overly impressed with their defense. I don't know that this offense is going to produce under that new OC. Hopefully they'll do some to make the games interesting, but I don't know that I'm picking up anybody on this team for 2025. Unless I just have to, if that's all I got, that's all I got. Sometimes you just get stuck in those bad pick, like picking ninth in a 12th man team, or a 12 team league. It's just not a happy spot to be, and you just kind of get what you get.
Right.
So yeah, hopefully I get a better draft selection and I don't have to take anybody from the Seahawks this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it with Seattle. We think that they are a bad team in 2025 due to a lot of the changes that they've made. And maybe they've got a very good picture for what they want the team to look like, and you just have to trust the process. For the guys whose jobs are on the line, I hope that there is clear communication with the top of the front office and saying, hey, we just got to let them work and we're going to get there. Coaches are not known to have a particularly long leash these days in any level of football. It seems to get shorter and shorter. So if they struggle the way that we think that they might, it could be that there are some more changes made next offseason. We're having the exact same conversation about new offensive coordinators, maybe a new head coach, different things of that nature. But like I said, the Seahawks are going to be a team to watch, and don't be surprised if they are not nearly as good as what they were last year, purely as a direct result of how much changed from last year to this year. They've had a pretty high rate of turnover.
Yep, I agree. All right, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody again for watching. Hope you're enjoying the series so far. Come back tomorrow because we've got another team in the division going. We're going to be talking about the Arizona Cardinals, a team that I think is a lot more exciting as far as the 2025 prospects go. So be sure to come back tomorrow and check that one